Hello, everyone. I am Pastor Peggy from the Lower Haynesville Wesleyan Church in Lower Haynesville, New Brunswick.
And I'm Pastor Diane from Norfolk Wesleyan Church in Norfolk, New York. Welcome
Welcome
to
to
Two
Two Pastors
Pastors on
on
a...
a Park Bench.
I think we're a little bit off sync, but that's okay.
We are two pastors on a park bench. We're supposed to be off sync.
Right.
Nothing is perfect in our world.
Because if we're both talking at the same time, we're not listening.
Exactly. Oh, that's a great segue.
I thought so.
Well, we are into our summer sermon series. Say that 3 times fast or 10 times fast. Our summer sermon series of biographies. Last year we did the men. Last year we did the women, and this year we're doing the men. And we thought that this sermon would be a great one to share with two pastors on a park bench. And it is the story of Rehoboam, King Rehoboam. And what we're looking at, what our goal is to at least share one sermon per month with you from our sermon series. Game Changers, we did every single one. This time around, we are doing one a month. And Rehoboam is a stand on its own 2 feet. And there's a lot of great stuff in here that we thought we want to share with you.
Yes. So first of all, do y'all know who Rehoboam was?
Oh.
If you do, write it in the comments. But he's one of these characters. You hear the name and you think, I think I know who he is. I'm not really sure. Was he this one or was he that one? I can't remember. And you know what? That's okay. It's all right. There's lots of characters in the Bible, and we can't remember them all.
It's like Rehoboam and Jeroboam and
right?
Other kinds of bones in there.
I always, until I went to Bible college, probably, I would get those two mixed up because they are contemporaries. Yeah. You find the story of Rehoboam in 2 places, actually. In 1 Kings chapters 12 and 14, and also in 2 Chronicles chapters 10 to 12. Kings and Chronicles basically tell the same story, but there's a difference in their purpose. So you might get a little bit more detail in one than you do in the other about particular instances. But most people who could say, oh yeah, I know who Rehoboam is, they will remember a particular incident in Rehoboam's life. Mm-hmm. He had just become king. And he was being brought out to sort of have his first address to the nation, if you will. And the people came to him and said, your father put so much work on us because Solomon was a builder. Got to build the temple, got to build this, got to build that. He was a builder, and he kept the people busy all the time, and they were just exhausted. I remember when I moved here, they had been without a pastor for a couple of years, and the people were exhausted from doing the ministry, and they needed a rest. And that's the situation we find with the Israelites when Rehoboam comes to power. And they said, give us a break, lighten the load some. Mm-hmm. So Rehoboam, he does the right thing. He goes and he seeks counsel. He goes and he talks to the advisors that had advised his father. And they gave him the advice that, you know what? If you lighten the load a bit for them, they will be so loyal to you. And Rehoboam thought about that, and then he said to himself, I'm going to ask some other people. I'm going to ask my friends. And his friends, they said to him, oh, you go back and you tell them, if you thought my father was hard on you, you just wait. I mean, am I wrong?
You might be paraphrasing, but
Quite a
not
bit.
by much.
I mean, that's the basic story, and that is the incident that we see the kingdom of Israel split in two, to the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom. That's not the reason that the kingdom was split. That was because of Solomon's sin, but that was the incident that ignited the whole chain of events.
They just threw their hands up the air. That was the straw that broke the camel's back,
Yeah.
kind of thing, right? And let's backtrack a little bit. We had Saul as the very first king, then we had David, then we had Solomon, and then we have Rehoboam. And you're right, Solomon was a builder. Solomon was all about getting the people to work. He needed to raise the money in order to be able to build the temple, all of those kinds of things. David sort of started that vision, but Solomon is the one that brought it into life, like put the breath of air in it. And now the people really needed that compassionate, empathetic king. And Rehoboam wasn't having any part of it. He listened to his friends and said, you know what, we're going to tax you more, we're going to put you to work more. And they were all like, yeah, no, that's not happening on our watch.
Yep.
Oh. So what can we learn? You know, this whole biography sermon series is looking at people, and you know, we did King David, we've did a couple of other people as well so far, but we're not looking necessarily at a story, although in this case we sort of are. But we're learning, what can we learn from this Bible character? What can we learn from them, even like 2, 3, 4,000 years later? So what can we learn from King Rehoboam, and how can we apply it to our lives today? And that is what we're asking ourselves in this sermon series.
Right. And I think the important lesson in all of this, when we look especially at this particular instance,
Yeah,
is the importance of listening. And there's three things that we want you to remember when you're listening. First of all, you need to listen to godly advisors. Let's face it, Rehoboam had listened, had sought out advice from his father's advisors, people that were wise and mature and understood the situation. He sought them out, but he didn't listen to their advice.
and I wonder why he didn't listen. Like, was it from own personal gain? Was it something that, you know, because he goes to his friends and he gets different advice, and he listens to them because it was advice that he wanted to hear. Sometimes listening, when we listen and we have options, there's advice that we want, and we want to take that, and then there's advice that we don't want to listen to. And King Rehoboam didn't want to listen to the godly advisors that Solomon had. Maybe he wanted his own personal gain. Like, he's like, my father was rich beyond, you know, measure. I want to be that way too. And by easing up the taxes and easing that's not going to fulfill my goals and agenda. And
Yeah.
sometimes we put our own goals and agenda ahead of good advice.
Yeah, it actually kind of reminds me of something that was written 1,000 years later by Paul when he was writing to Timothy. He's talking about Timothy preaching the word and the importance of the word for instruction and all this. And in 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 3, It says, "For the time will come when people will not put up with sound doctrine. Instead, to suit their own desires, they will gather around them a great number of teachers to say what their itching ears want to hear."
Hmm.
Um, that's what Rehoboam did. He brought around his good buddies that would say, "Yes, sir. Great idea, sir. Yeah.
Tickle the ears of me. I want people to agree with me. I want yes men around me, right?
Yep."
Yep.
And from this incident, we often assume that Rehoboam was a young man. I mean, I have always pictured him as like in his 20s, maybe early
Yeah.
20s. But he was 41 when he became the king.
Not as old as Prince Charles was when he became king, but hey, we're getting there. We're close.
Yeah. So one of the things we can learn from Rehoboam is we need to listen to godly advisors, but we also need to listen to the needs of others, the needs
Yeah.
of people whom we are serving, the needs of those around us.
Mm-hmm.
As we
Yeah.
said, the people had been working so hard under the reign of Solomon to build, 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 and they needed a rest. And Rehoboam neglected to listen to that need.
Mm-hmm. And we all get into those positions where, you know, we start growing weary. We start and we go to our leader, whoever our leader happens to be, because I have a leader in the Atlantic Canada district, but he has a leader in the national level, and then he has a leader. Like, we all have leaders.
Yep.
And if we're the top of the top, then we have people around us that aren't always yes men, or yes women, but those who will challenge us. And I appreciate the fact that you have a leader, I have a leader, and I appreciate the fact that I have a leader who listens to the needs of the people and the needs of the other leaders, like me as a leader in Haynesville, you as a leader in Norfolk. And we need that in our lives, and we need people who are willing to listen to people. Because every church is in a different context, with different people, with different needs to their communities. And there's no one cookie cutter. I was going to say cutty cooker. There's no one cookie cutter model that you can pick up this model and transplant it and work it here, like you do with a franchise. A franchise does that, like you have a franchise of Tim Hortons or McDonald's, and it would be awful if I went to McDonald's and got a Big Mac and it wasn't the same as what a Big Mac should taste like. There are cookie cutters in that. But we have to be able to listen to the needs of the people. Rehoboam was not listening to the needs of his people at all.
Yeah, and I think also when he sought out the advice, you had mentioned, why did he seek out their advice? Why did he listen to them? What was the motive behind their advice?
Yeah.
Did they think, well, if we give him this advice and he has total control, some of that'll seep down on us?
Ooh.
You see, they had a bias. They had a hopefully an invested interest in what was going to happen. And the thing to learn here is we need to listen to people that have no bias, that are no no connection necessarily.
How is that worded? No skin in the game or
No,
something like that?
yes, that's it. I was trying
Yeah,
to think, what is that called?
there we go. I know these things.
Yeah, I'm not good with sports analogies.
So in saying all of this about listening, um, we really, as a culture and as a society, have we lost the ability to be able to listen? So what is listening exactly? Because we can say we need to listen, we need to have godly advisors, we need to listen to the needs of others, and the we need to listen to advice that is unbiased. But what is listening? And how do we define that? Because I don't think a lot of us understand the psychology behind listening and the ability to be able to listen. So maybe we need to define this a little bit more to our listeners.
Well, I'm sure you have a definition.
Yeah, I do. Did some research on it there, Diane.
What was that?
I
Sorry, I
said,
wasn't listening.
so true. But listening, the definition of listening is giving attention to a sound or action. When listening, a person hears what others are saying and tries to understand what it means. The act of listening involves complex, uh, affective, cognitive, and behavioral processes. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Um, Kind of reminds me of James 1:22, which says, do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. That behavioral processes means you're not just going to be taking information in. You've got to act on it somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it goes on, it says listening means paying attention not only to the story, but how it is told, the use of language, the use of voice, and the other person's use of their body. In other words, it means to be aware of both verbal and nonverbal messages. Because I can say one thing one way and be angry and or defensive or
What do you
whatever.
mean?
What do you mean, right?
So, what do you
Well,
mean?
there we go. There we go. That's perfect. Um, so what makes a good listener? What makes a good listener? Um, and I think, in order to explain what makes a good listener, you almost have to talk about what makes a person a bad listener first to sort of help you define what a good listener is. And we have a few things about poor listeners. What makes a poor listener? Poor listeners are seen as competitive, as listening only to identify the errors in reason and logic, using their silence as a chance to prepare their next response. This may make them an excellent debater, but it doesn't make them a good listener. And how many times have I thought about this? I mean, I knew this stuff before, but there are times when I'm listening to someone and I'm literally sitting there thinking about how I can respond to this instead of just listening to them. That makes me a good debater and not necessarily a good listener at that particular point in time. Or it makes me defensive in a way and not necessarily a good listener.
Right, right.
Right.
And very close to that, um, Peggy was talking about listening to find the errors, to argue. But then there's the poor listener who is using that time the other person is speaking to focus on, how am I going to contribute to this conversation? What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? And it's not listening for the errors. It's just listening for the cue that it's now my turn to talk.
Oh, yeah,
I want to
it's
talk.
my turn to talk. I mean, let's face it, we're pastors. We love to talk, and we get 20 to 30 minutes of uninterrupted time each week, each Sunday
Yeah.
morning.
Well, a poor listener is not focused on the person that's talking, and they're easily Oh, sorry. I was distracted. And it was me talking. So a good listener, they will take the opportunities to, like, maybe shut the windows so they don't hear the neighbors talking or the leaves rustling or whatever. They'll take the time to set the scene so that they can listen.
I mean, nowadays, how many times have I been trying to have a conversation with someone and they're like this? Yeah, I'm listening. Go ahead.
I just have a couple more moves in my game.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Not concentrating. One of the things is that sometimes when you're trying to talk to someone, they already, you don't need to explain anymore. I know what you're talking about. And I'm like, no, you don't. Like, I know you think you do, but I haven't finished yet. I haven't finished. I need you to listen to more, because I know where your head is jumping, but that's not where I want your head to jump to. And you need to listen to me, to listen out what I need to say in order for you to be able to hear it. But sometimes people just jump to conclusions, or they'll take an idea and you'll run it through their mind and they'll spit it out. And it's so far off of what the original person was saying, that, oh, we've done this before, but and I'm like, yeah, no, hold on a second. Now we're going to do it a little differently this time, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
people don't want to listen.
Yeah.
And then, of course, go ahead.
Finally, poor listeners, especially if they don't like the message they're hearing, they will criticize the speaker. Well, they just got too big for their britches and think they know everything.
Or they're
going and getting a PhD and whatever.
Yeah, they've got all kinds of book knowledge, but where's their real life experience?
Yeah, if you want to know how to raise kids, just ask somebody who doesn't have any.
Right. Like, I don't know, like there's a show called The Nanny, I believe it's called. And this woman she has no children of her own, but she is amazing when it comes to being able to walk into somebody's home, observe the behavior and everything like that, and be able to line everything up and go, this is what you need to do. And it works. Sometimes people that don't have children or have never been married will have great advice for people who are married or have kids.
Yep.
But let's not look at age and gender and ethnicity and all of those kinds of things, but be able to listen, just for the sake of listening, because other people do have, and when you start criticizing the speaker, that's a real problem, and you're not listening at that point.
Yeah. So true. So true. So those are things that make up a poor listener.
Yeah.
But we need to know what makes a good listener.
Yeah. Good listeners is much more than being silent when another person talks. A lot of times we're thinking, oh, if I'm just silent and I just listen, then, I'll just be silent and that'll make me a good listener. It's not. It's to the contrary. And it says people perceive the best listeners to be those who periodically ask some questions that promote discovery and insights. These questions gently change old assumptions, but do so in a constructive way. And to be that's why we have, ask two pastors on a park bench. Maybe you're listening to this and you have some questions. Type them in. We love questions.
We do.
Yeah.
So good listening includes interaction.
Yep.
It's a two-way street. But those interactions have to build on the conversation and build the person's self-esteem. A few years ago, when I was still married, my now ex-husband was taking a class in Intro to Counseling, and he had heard this term, active listening. Now, anybody who's done any counseling courses or even books on relationships talk about active listening. Mm-hmm. And he came home and he decided he was going to try this out. Oops. And I mean, he was trying, okay? He was trying.
He was trying.
But oh my goodness, it angered me. I mean, I'm getting angry just thinking about the conversation. Active listening is when you listen to what somebody says and sort of echo back to them what they say.
So what you're saying is?
Yes, that would be the phraseology, especially for somebody just starting out. So what you're saying is, or what I hear is, but the idea is to put it in your own words. He didn't do that. I had a good day today. So what you're saying is you had a good day? Yes, that's what I just said. So he says, so how was it a good day? That's what he should have started with, not the repeating back to me. Well, I got up and I got housework done real quick and talked on the phone with a friend and got to sit down and watch my favorite TV show. So what you're saying is you did housework and talked to a friend and you got to watch TV. He was trying. He was trying.
He was trying. God love him. He was trying.
Good listeners make the other person feel supported and convey confidence in them, and don't just mirror back word for word, but understand the underlying stuff. And you may get it wrong at first.
Yeah.
You may get it wrong. You probably will get it wrong. I know I do quite often. But asking the question says to the other person, I'm interested in understanding what we're talking about.
And a good listener, in addition to that, they may ask questions, they may push back, but they're wanting to do that not to win an argument, but to understand what it is that you're saying. So there's a difference in, like when someone approaches it and they're listening and they're like, well, I disagree with you and I'm going to prove my point here. That's not listening. That's not listening. But they may challenge and ask questions, and but they're trying to be helpful and not necessarily shut you down. And that is the difference between a good listener and a poor listener.
Yeah. So back to our biblical character, our biography character, Rehoboam. I think it's interesting that, he sought the advice, step, but he didn't listen.
He heard the needs of his people, but he chose to ignore them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't approach it with compassion and empathy. It was, how can I get ahead?
How can I get ahead? And that is what we can learn. We can learn from Rehoboam, seek out godly counsels, listen to the needs of your people, listen to unbiased advice. And then instead of reacting, as Rehoboam did, to respond with compassion and empathy. And how many, if he had done that, goes back to the godly advice that he got. They said, if you listen to this advice and you ease up on the people just a little, they will honor, they will listen to you, and you will be their king. But he didn't, and the kingdoms fell. Yeah. Right. But responding with compassion and empathy, we all want compassion and empathy in our lives. We all want to be seen, to be heard, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's as a leader, no matter where it is, or whether you're a congregation member. We want, we don't want to, I can't even think of what it is that I'm trying to say. We don't want to browbeat people. We want to listen. We want to listen to the needs of our community. Yeah. What are some of the needs in our community, and how, as a church, can we respond with compassion and empathy? I just have a quick little story this morning. I was out sitting on my front deck having my morning cup of coffee, and it was raining a little bit, and the rain just eased up. And all of a sudden I had this lady pull into my driveway. I'm like, that's odd, right? Maybe she's lost and seen me outside and needs some directions. You never know. And she came in and she said, I have these tomato plants and these peppers and these seeds, and I just wanted to find out where I can plant them in the community garden, because I want to help out with the needs of the community here in Lower Haynesville. And I said, basically, anywhere you see that is vacant right now can be used up. And she said, what a great idea this is. I hope it's well used. She went off with her stuff. She left me some seeds and things like that. She went off with her plants. She planted them up at the community garden. But I'm like, yeah, we need another 3 of these things in order to have the needs of the community met. And having fresh vegetables and things like that. If you're walking by and you see some, and we need to put up signs as well. This is free to the community. This belongs to this person. This belongs to that person. We had that in Slave Lake. Different nonprofit organizations had raised gardens. And then there was always a couple that just planted for the community. So this was the community bed, and anybody could walk along and pick things out of it. Wow. But again, it's about listening and putting your words into action, and responding with compassion and empathy.
Very good. Well, it's been fun talking about Rehoboam, and learning from his life and things that we should and shouldn't do.
learning from other people's mistakes is a skill that
Yes.
some people have and some people don't.
Yep.
And what we can learn from these people in the Bible, it can help teach us a lot and help us to avoid those same pitfalls. So it's really important.
It
to
really is. So,
listen.
well, hopefully you can join us in another few weeks for another message, another biography from the Bible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Until then, I'm Pastor Diane from Norfolk Wesleyan Church.
And I'm Pastor Peggy from Lower Haynesville Wesleyan.
Wherever you may find yourself this week,
Find a way to listen.
Bye.
Bye.